Hello, and welcome to Autology, the weekly podcast that brings you the latest on automotive technology. This week's episode is called Who Wants an NFT Alfa? And you're here with me, Yanina Mills. We have Brian Rhodes, Associate Director for Connected Car and Vehicle Experience, alongside Nishant Parekh, Senior Research Analyst for Automotive Supply Chain Technology and Aftermarket based in India. Hello to you both, and thank you for joining this week's episode of Autology.
Hi, Anina. Hi, Brian. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, hey everyone. Happy to be here.
Thanks, guys. So this one requires obviously a little bit of background, right? We've heard the term NFT, but what exactly does that mean? And what does it have to do with cars?
Yeah, I think to understand NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens, we first need to talk a little bit about blockchain. Um, so blockchain is a digital decentralized ledger that provides a way for information to be recorded, shared, and maintained by a community. In fact, it also enables instant settlement of recorded transactions, and transactions are visible to all participants with identical copies maintained on multiple computer systems. So essentially what blockchain is doing is it's allowing the possibility of making transactions irrevocable, which can increase the accuracy of records. And Bitcoin, as we all know, was in fact the first blockchain. Now coming to NFT. Broadly, an NFT is a digital asset that exists on a blockchain. It represents real world objects like art or music or even in game items and videos. They are frequently bought and sold online with cryptocurrency, and they are generally encoded with the same underlying software as many cryptos. Now, let us look at what blockchain and NFTs have to do with cars and the auto industry.
So it seems Stellantis is the latest automotive manufacturer to debut NFTs with the Alfa Romeo Tonale. So what exactly does this entail?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting. Alfa Romeo launched this couple of months back, and so the NFT technology and the Alfa Romeo Tonale is based on the blockchain card concept. Now, what's that? It's a confidential and non-modifiable record of the main stages in the life of an individual vehicle. So essentially, what this means is, with the customer's consent, the NFT will record vehicle data and then generate a certificate which can be used as a guarantee that the car has been properly maintained. This is this is actually aimed at potentially enhancing the vehicle's residual value. That was one of the main intents of uh, Alfa Romeo. Now, to summarize, the NFT associated with each tonale uh, basically validates the authenticity and uniqueness of that specific vehicle. This will essentially allow the user to get an online and non corruptible certificate of usage. Um, and I think, as with this technology, Alpha is expected to extend this NFT technology to its other models as well.
Great. So we know Alpha is doing this. Is there anyone else that's trying to break into this as well?
Yeah, I can take this one. Alpha definitely made news. It was a few months back that they announced this, but it's not the first. I think it's just a unique approach to this. I think first and foremost, blockchain definitely is not new to this industry. So, Mercedes, BMW, Volvo, they've been exploring blockchain for a number of years for different use cases. One that I think is particularly interesting, especially when you talk about electrification and where some of these sensitive materials are being sourced around, like ethical mining is a really key conversation in industry, making sure we're not getting cobalt from a mine that was used by child labor or something like that, right? So the ability to source the material throughout its value chain before it even comes to an automaker, right? Something that can be very difficult to control, but at least getting some insight over it that eventually could then help with maybe future regulations, or wherever we need to move as an industry to make this work. Emissions is another area where blockchain has been used to get really in depth for where the footprint is for emissions, where things go wrong, where things are more sensitive, and of course you can layer that over a regulatory environment as well. If we bring this though just to the NFT question, there's certainly been examples from Lamborghini, McLaren, MG Motors, and there's some others as well, including like auction houses and third-party companies around the automotive industry that are mostly digital art tokens. So it's a little bit different. It's not necessarily pulling data off your vehicle, but for instance, if you buy a certain Lamborghini, Yana, if you're in the market for a Lamborghini, you can also get a digital art token with it, and that kind of is going to give you, similar to the NFT market you might have seen on social media, on Twitter and things like that. This sort of digital asset you own and control, and maybe even a use case where you can use it for online gaming and in the metaverse and these types of things. So different approach, right? But it's still an NFT, right? The concept still definitely has been in the industry as of the last few years, let's say. A couple of other examples beyond Alpha that I think are particularly interesting, at least to me personally, MG Motors, they mentioned, is certainly one. So last year they launched the Aster SUV, and this has a blockchain protected vehicle digital passport. So the concept is not dissimilar. The use case is a little different from Alpha, where you can use this for resale benefits, similar to making sure that it's serviced correctly. That's definitely it. Think about a passport, but just for your vehicle. Also insurance use cases. So usage-based insurance is definitely another hot topic in the industry. This could be a way to provide more insight to your insurance provider in exchange for you, the end customer. If you're a safe driver, maybe you get a discount on your policy as a result. IM Motors in China, another very unique example here. They've launched a blockchain-based program that's really fundamental to their brand and their brand perception. So there's a couple ways you can earn tokens in this sense. One would be data sharing. So agreeing to consent to aspects of the vehicle data being provided back to the automaker in this case, and then they have the ability to use it for a number of different reasons or different use cases. Excuse me. They could sell the data. They could package it for a usage-based insurance platform that they see the benefit of. They could use it for internal quality and kind of more traditional use cases. Another way to earn tokens would be social activities. So you're in the XYZ vehicle club. You show up to this event, this launch party for a new vehicle. Maybe you log into the website and you post a blog, comment or something. So those tokens then add up and can be exchanged for maybe a hardware upgrade to the vehicle, or a software upgrade, like a paid update that might cost a certain amount of dollars, except you can use your tokens instead, or insurance credits, a discount on your insurance premium by it taking away from your token wallet as opposed to your traditional wallet. This will probably sound real out there if you haven't heard of this concept before, and to be honest, even if you have, it probably sounds out there. But what definitely piques my interest is that the fact that this is a very real thing. These tokens are based on the valuation of the company, right? This isn't pulled out of thin air from somewhere. They have real financial value, obviously dependent on the financial health of the organization as a whole. But they, even if you're a token holder, you have them in your digital wallet, you'll receive dividends as if it was a stock, right? Because again, it's associated to a certain percentage of the entire firm's value. So yeah, I think those two stand out from my side, along with Alpha, as some really unique use cases here.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting stuff. And obviously, it seems as though a lot of companies are starting to dabble in this. But I guess the other question is, who's actually benefiting from these NFTs? Is this something that the end consumer really wants, or is it just another money-making tool for the car maker?
Yeah. So we've spoken to a lot of blockchain companies in the past few months, and even automakers. And what we understand is, according to companies that are working on this tech, and but this will mean using NFTs as a means of recording vehicle data. There are actually several benefits, because the underlying technology is using decentralized blockchain. Um, and uh, I want to also talk a bit about this technology in the context of automotive after sales. Now, let's look at what are the benefits for a vehicle owner, for example. This can provide a simplified and a continuous monitoring of their vehicle's life. Uh, in addition to, I think, what we covered, which is potentially better resale price, and this is also a key focus area for Alpha. There are also benefits for automakers. Um, they can develop new features based on just first-hand data that's generated from the NFT, and they can also improve their workshops and services um, based on this data that they receive. It gets now more interesting for repair service providers. They can get an estimate of vehicle interventions, and this is very critical for their business. In effect, this allows them to secure parts availability and even offer predictive maintenance services. This has the potential to sort of shake up the traditional business model where a car owner goes to a repair service provider after actually experiencing a breakdown or wanting something fixed in their vehicle. Now, I think moving on, and Brian did briefly touch upon this earlier, there are several benefits as far as insurance companies goes. Insurers can assess the risk of a breakdown or an accident by analyzing the driving behavior of a particular vehicle, and based on that, they can offer personalized insurance by assessing the customer's driving behavior. Um, what are the benefits for used car buyers? Um, so used car buyers can, of course, leverage this certified information on the blockchain to reduce the risks during acquisition. It gives them more information, it gives them more power to understand the life cycle of this, the life history actually of this vehicle, the previous owners, the maintenance history, how this vehicle has been driven, whether it has experienced uh, flooding or any major car accidents. So essentially, that's a lot of important information for a used car buyer. And I think lastly, public authorities also have a very important use case for this. They can actually access data relating to the vehicle's registration, emissions, as well as technical inspection. Several countries have mandatory technical inspection uh, after a few years. In fact, emission rules, with emission rules changing in several companies, uh, car owners have to be aware of that, and they have to keep their pollution in check. So public authorities can use this data to ensure that a vehicle's emissions are also under control. Now, I think finally, an interesting point to be made with regards to a vehicle digital passport is that while the solution from, say, a technological standpoint, it allows for collaborative governance. It's actually even open to industrial players and public authorities. Um, so that several of the benefits will depend on parties getting access rights, because all these benefits that I've covered right now, they are pertinent on parties getting access rights to this particular NFT, which is based on a blockchain. So, uh, so in case of an automaker rolling out this technology at launch, it will be very important to see if, for instance, uh, an independent aftermarket is being given access to this technology. So I think most of these benefits will be contingent upon them getting access to read as well as write data. So I think as this technology evolves, that will be a very interesting space for us to look out for.
Yeah, you make a really good point there. That the data conversation, it's such a hot button issue right now, the access rights. Who has access to the data? And this is going through legal and regulatory reviews everywhere. In the US, certainly it's happening at a state level. We hear, news out of Massachusetts that's, probably a domino effect that affects others. But I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of these use cases, but it does come down to data access. And that is one clear benefit of not just specifically these NFTs, but to be honest, blockchain broadly speaking, it really does make it a very transparent and decentralized environment for who can access this, right? I think one of the clear benefits here is that we have this conversation about the amount of data that cars are generating, and the hardware is being equipped more and more to allow for even more data to come off the car in an impactful way in the future. But there's a gap between how it's, how that value add is made clear to the end consumer, and not only the value add, but how do they access it? How do they comprehend it or understand it? In Europe, you can do a GDPR report and pull the data off of your vehicle. It's a legal requirement now, right? But what does that Excel file or CSV file mean when you have access to it? It's very hard to comprehend if you're just, if you're not maybe in the industry or not playing around with this type of data on a regular basis. So I really think that the value is tough to define, and that makes it a tough sell. This is the issue, I think, and it's going to be an issue for any first mover. So it's not to say that this will not be significant in the future. It's really hard to bring someone into your dealership lot and have this fairly complex conversation. Certainly you can have a conversation about the pure value adds, right? Specific to the end customer. You can talk about it strictly to aftermarket players this way and insurers that way, and used car buyers the other way. But broadly speaking, it gets complicated quickly, right? So that's definitely one area where this is, to your original question, Yana, is this something the end customer really wants? Yeah, probably not. But that doesn't mean there's not value to them, right? I think Carfax is really a really good example of the value of data. Now, we're not necessarily talking about data being transmitted off the vehicle, but especially if you're in the US and you're buying a used car, Carfax is probably a part of your process for purchasing, right? Understanding ownership history and service history, and if there's accidents and things like that. That's really important information. And it sort of allows you to level the playing field a little bit in terms of who you might buy that vehicle from, if you trust the insight that you're gathering from any report, as an example. So I do think that there's consumer facing value for sure. It's just a little complicated to explain, which is not an insignificant detail. And that goes beyond, we're talking about the Alfa example here, right? I think there's the digital art piece of this that's a little bit more gimmicky. So, we're really focusing on the data aspect of this. One thing too, when we talk about those broad implications that Nishant went through, it really, none of them really work if it's just a single model, or even if it's all of Alpha, maybe even if it's all of Stellantis, right? This is really something that needs to be broad-based so you can communicate it properly. For instance, if this is a service shop use case, okay, the value is clear of them being able to see the vehicle data, how it was driven, all of this insight would be tremendous for them to gather. But if it's just coming off of a particular Alpha, are they really going to change their ways of thinking or operating, for this specific use case, unless they happen to be in like Turin or somewhere that has a significantly higher proportion of Alphas on the road? Probably not, right? It needs to sort of be an industry movement that allows the benefit to, it sort of requires scale, is what I'm trying to say. I think a lot of these use cases require scale.
Yeah, so that was really helpful in understanding some of these use cases. And like you mentioned, consumers may not really want it or know that they want it. So, I mean, is this something that we expect to take off soon?
Yeah, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say probably not. Depends on your definition of soon, I suppose. So, maybe this looks dumb in 5 years, but early bets on the metaverse in particular, they're speculative at best, right? Now, I just mentioned that it was gimmicky, but I kind of want to go back to this point of the digital art, or maybe the use case of of bringing your vehicle into gaming and things like that. I don't think we should just sort of discount this too much, because this whole industry for over 100 years, as soon as two competitive vehicles were offered, has been it's been a very niche type industry. And what I mean by that is we've got like Mustang owner clubs and the Jeep Wave Club and Tesla forums, and there's a lot of enthusiasts in this industry. Dodge is another good brand for enthusiasts. So this aspect of offering a digital car with your Lamborghini, for instance, I do think that can work for a very specific community. And we're not talking about billions of dollars of investment that requires, a significant uptick in sales to matter. This could just be another way to kind of appreciate and remain sticky with the people that really care about your brand identity. Or in the case of a new EV brand, earlier we mentioned a few examples, maybe it's you creating that identity and establishing it. So I do think there's something to that, right? Again, it doesn't mean that some very high volume vehicle this is going to be particularly impactful for, but again, it's a niche world. In terms of the data side, where we focused more of this conversation, we're really only at the beginning of the vehicle data conversation, right? And if you look at it from a consumer's perspective, we might not have even started the vehicle data conversation. It's going through like right to repair, for instance, in the US. This is a lot of an initial eye-opening conversation of how much data is even coming off the vehicle. So I do think there's a lot of potential ahead for consumer awareness, the use cases that are going to impact, of course, the industry players quicker, but the end consumers eventually. So soon, maybe not, but I do think there's a lot of long-term potential here.
A very interesting point that Brian has made about scale. And we, in our conversations with automakers, this came up multiple times, that for this to work well, scale will be quite critical. Um, and I think some of the conversation that we've had with a few blockchain companies and other stakeholders in this space, it actually suggests that some automakers may adopt a wait and watch approach. They want to assess if using NFT as a means of recording vehicle data actually translates into a solid business proposition. So their decision could be based on that, and will actually determine if they make serious moves in this space. In fact, a luxury automaker we spoke to even told us that they'd evaluated this technology a few years ago itself. But until human intervention continues to play a big role uh, as part of the blockchain, which of course is the base technology for an NFT, they do not see value in this. So the technology actually also faces a few challenges, and one of them is data correction in case of human error. Now again, to give an example from an after sales point of view, um, if a service advisor or a technician at a workshop uh, makes an error, that may not be very simple to correct if there's an NFT recording a vehicle's data over its life. Now, this is of course in the context of using blockchain for recording vehicle data. So ultimately, it will be very interesting to see if companies overcome these challenges to what extent technology develops to sort of refine or improve these challenges, and to see if automakers ultimately follow Alfa Romeo and launch themselves into this space. Some of them have the potential to do that, especially those concerned about missing the opportunity to be one of the first ones to innovate in this field. So that would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, both of you shared a lot of really interesting details. I mean, this is a quickly growing trend, and it's interesting to see how it's, really breaking into the automotive industry. So thank you. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. A big thank you to you both for joining Autology.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
And thank you to all you listeners for tuning in as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode at our autology@ihsmarket.com email, and you can find out much more at autotechinsight.ihsmarket.com. Don't forget to hit all the subscribe, follow, and like buttons to stay on track with the latest Autology podcasts, and we look forward to you joining us again in the next episode. Bye for now.